The music was too loud, the lights were too bright, and everyone in the ballroom wanted something from him. Ji-hoon stood against the marble pillar, his fingers pressed hard against his palms, counting the chandelier crystals above him. 147, 148. His father had insisted he come tonight, wear the tailored suit, smile at the right people, and be the perfect son of Don Kong, but perfection felt like suffocation, and Ji-hoon's chest tightened with every passing second. Then she appeared. A woman in a flowing gold dress moved through the crowd like water finding its path, her steps deliberate yet graceful. She wasn't trying to charm anyone, or win favor. She simply existed with a confidence that made the chaos around her seem irrelevant. When her eyes met his across the room, something shifted. She walked directly toward him, and Ji-hoon's heart hammered against his ribs. "You look like you could use an escape," she said, her voice low and warm, carrying the faintest accent he couldn't quite place. "Would you like to dance?" Ji-hoon's throat went dry. No one ever asked him directly. They always went through his father, through intermediaries, through carefully orchestrated introductions. But this woman, whoever she was, stood before him with an outstretched hand and patient eyes that didn't demand an immediate answer. I don't dance well," he managed, his voice barely audible over the orchestra. "Neither do most people here," she replied with a slight smile. "But they're doing it anyway. Come on. Just one song. If you hate it, you can go back to counting whatever you were counting." His eyes widened. How did she know? She didn't wait for his response. Her hand gently took his, and before Ji-hoon could process what was happening, they were moving toward the dance floor. His body tensed, every nerve screaming at the sudden change, but her grip was steady, grounding. When they reached the center, she positioned herself carefully, leaving space between them, her movements slow and predictable. "Follow my lead," she whispered, "and if anything feels like too much, just tell me." The song began, a slow, melodic piece that wasn't too overwhelming. She guided him through simple steps, her rhythm easy to follow. Ji-hoon focused on her face, blocking out the staring guests, the whispers, the judgment he knew was coming. For 3 minutes and 42 seconds, the world narrowed to just the two of them, and something impossible happened. He relaxed. When the song ended, Ji-hoon realized he was breathing easier. The woman stepped back, releasing his hand with the same gentleness she'd taken it. "See? Not so terrible," she said. "Who are you?" Ji-hoon asked, the question tumbling out before he could stop it. "Zara," she replied. "I teach dance. I was hired to perform tonight, but honestly, dancing with you was the first real moment I've had all evening." Before he could respond, a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. "Ji-hoon." His father's voice carried the weight of command and barely concealed displeasure. Don Kong stood behind him, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp as glass. "It's time to greet the councilman." Ji-hoon nodded, but before leaving, he turned back to Zara. "Thank you." She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Anytime." As his father led him away, Ji-hoon glanced back once more. Zara had already disappeared into the crowd, but something had changed. For the first time in years, he felt like he'd been seen, not as the Mafia Heir, not as the quiet, strange son of Don Kong, but as himself. What Ji-hoon didn't know was that his father had noticed everything. That night, after the gala ended and Ji-hoon retreated to his room, Don Kong made a phone call. His voice was measured, deliberate. "Find out everything about the woman my son danced with tonight." Everything. 3 days later, Zara noticed the car. It was a sleek, black sedan parked across the street from her dance studio, its windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. At first, she thought nothing of it. The neighborhood was upscale, expensive cars were common. But when it appeared again the next day, and the day after that, her instincts sharpened. "Girl, you need to be careful," her friend Amina said over coffee, her expression serious. "That family you entertained at the gala, the Kongs, they're not just wealthy, they're dangerous, connected. You don't want that kind of attention. Zara stirred her tea slowly. I just danced with someone who looked uncomfortable, that's all. That's never all with people like them, Amina insisted. Promise me you'll be careful. Zara promised, but she didn't change her routine. She'd worked too hard to build her studio, to create a space where movement and expression could heal, to let fear dictate her choices. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then, on Thursday evening, as she locked up the studio, she heard footsteps behind her. Zara! She spun around, her keys clutched between her fingers like a weapon. But it wasn't a threat. It was Ji-hoon, standing under the streetlight, his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, looking uncertain and vulnerable. Ji-hoon, how did you... I'm sorry, he said quickly, the words rushing out. I asked someone where you taught. I know this is strange, showing up like this, but I wanted to ask you something. Zara relaxed slightly, but remained cautious. What is it? Would you teach me? The question hung in the air between them. To dance, I mean. Properly, not just one song at a party, but really teach me. She studied him carefully. There was something desperate in his request, something deeper than just wanting to learn steps. Why? She asked. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. Because when I danced with you, I felt quiet. Inside my head, everything is always so loud, so overwhelming, but with you, with the movement, it was different. I need that. Please. Zara should have said no. Every rational part of her brain screamed to maintain distance from this family, this world. But when she looked at Ji-hoon, she didn't see danger. She saw someone drowning who'd just found a lifeline. Okay, she said finally. But this stays between us. Private lessons. No family, no guards, no complications. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. Thank you so much. What neither of them realized was that the black sedan was still watching. Over the next 2 weeks, Ji-hoon came to the studio 3 times a week. Zara quickly adapted her teaching style, learning his boundaries, understanding his needs. When certain sounds or movements overwhelmed him, she adjusted. When he needed repetition to feel secure, she provided it. And slowly, beautifully, Ji-hoon began to transform. You're a natural, Zara said one evening as he completed a complex sequence without hesitation. You feel the music differently than most people. That's a gift. Ji-hoon's face flushed with pride. I've never been good at anything my father values. Business, negotiations, reading people. But this makes sense to me. What you're good at matters, Zara said firmly, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Their sessions became more than just dance lessons. In the quiet of the studio, with only music and movement between them, Ji-hoon opened up about his life, the pressure of being Don Kong's only son, the expectations he could never meet, the loneliness of being different in a world that demanded conformity. Zara shared her own story, growing up between 2 cultures, never quite belonging to either, coming to the city to build something of her own, to create art that bridged worlds. They were both outsiders, she realized, both trying to find their place in spaces that didn't quite fit. Do you ever feel like you're performing? Ji-hoon asked one night as they cooled down after a particularly intense session. Like you're always playing a role for other people? Every day, Zara admitted, until I dance. Then I'm just... me. That's what I want, Ji-hoon said quietly. To just be me. Not the air, not the disappointment, not the problem to be managed. Just Ji-hoon. Zara reached out and squeezed his hand. Then that's who you'll be here. But their sanctuary couldn't last forever. The knock on the studio door came on a Tuesday evening. Zara was demonstrating a turn sequence when 3 men in dark suits entered without waiting for permission. Ji-hoon tensed immediately, his body going rigid. Mr. Kong, the lead man said, his voice flat and professional, your father requests your immediate presence. I'm not finished here, Ji-hoon replied, but his voice shook. It wasn't a request. Zara stepped forward, placing herself slightly between Ji-hoon and the men. He said he's not finished. The lesson ends in 30 minutes. He'll go then. The lead man's eyes shifted to her, and for the first time, Zara felt the full weight of the world Ji-hoon lived in. This wasn't about politeness or respect. This was about power and control. "Miss Okonkwo," the man said, and hearing her full name from his lips sent ice through her veins. "Don Kang would also like to speak with you. Now would be convenient." Ji-hoon's face went pale. "No, she has nothing to do with this." "Then you'll both come voluntarily," the man replied. "Or we'll make other arrangements." Zara met Ji-hoon's eyes. She could see the fear there, the apology, the shame. She squeezed his shoulder gently. "It's okay," she said. "Let's go." The drive to the Kang estate was silent and suffocating. Ji-hoon sat beside her in the back seat, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Zara wanted to comfort him, but she knew the men watching would report everything. When they arrived, she was led to an ornate study that smelled of expensive cigars and older money. Don Kang sat behind a massive desk, his presence filling the room despite his stillness. He was older than she'd realized at the gala, his hair silver but his posture that of a much younger man. His eyes, she noticed, were exactly like Ji-hoon's, dark and penetrating. "Miss Okonkwo," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please sit." Zara sat, keeping her spine straight and her expression neutral. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "Yes." "And yet you've been spending considerable time alone with my son. Teaching him, I'm told. Dance?" The way he said the word made it sound frivolous, meaningless. "He asked me to teach him," Zara replied evenly. "He's a paying student. That's all." Don Kang leaned forward slightly. "That's all? You expect me to believe you have no ulterior motives? No plans to use his, condition? To manipulate him? To gain access to my family, my business?" The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Zara felt anger rising in her chest but forced it down. Reacting emotionally would only confirm whatever narrative he'd already constructed. "I expect you to believe what you want," she said carefully. "But the truth is simple. Your son wanted to learn something that brings him peace. I taught him. There's no conspiracy, no scheme, just dance." "My son doesn't need peace," Don Kang said coldly. "He needs strength. He needs to learn how to survive in this world, not escape into fantasy." "Maybe he needs both," Zara countered, and immediately regretted her boldness. Don Kang's expression hardened. "You know nothing about what my son needs. You've known him for weeks. I've raised him for 24 years. "Then why is he drowning?" The words came out before Zara could stop them. "If you know what he needs so well, why does he look like he's suffocating? Every time he's around your world?" The silence that followed was deafening. Don Kang stood slowly, his height and presence meant to intimidate. But Zara had faced prejudice, had built a life in foreign spaces, had survived too much to be cowed by posturing. "You will stop seeing my son," Don Kang said, his voice deadly quiet. "You will close your studio to him. If he contacts you, you will refuse. Do you understand? And if I don't? Then you'll discover that this city can become very unwelcoming very quickly." Before Zara could respond, the door burst open. Ji-hoon stood there, breathing hard, his face flushed with emotion. "No," he said, his voice stronger than Zara had ever heard it. "Father, no, you can't do this." "Ji-hoon, return to your room. This doesn't concern you." "It's about me!" Ji-hoon's hands were shaking, but he held his ground. "Everything is always about me, about protecting me, about controlling me, but you never actually ask what I want." "What you want is irrelevant when what you want is dangerous," Don Kang replied. "She's not dangerous. She's the only person who's treated me like I'm capable of anything. The only one who doesn't look at me like I'm broken." The raw pain in Ji-hoon's voice cut through the tension. Zara stood up, moving toward him instinctively. "Ji-hoon," she said softly. He turned to her, his eyes wet. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry he dragged you into this. It's not your fault, she said. Don Kong watched this exchange with an expression Zara couldn't quite read. Then, surprisingly, he spoke to his son with something almost like gentleness. Ji-hoon, go upstairs. Miss Okonkwo and I need to finish our conversation. Ji-hoon looked between them, clearly torn. Finally, with visible reluctance, he left. When the door closed, Don Kong returned to his seat. He looked suddenly tired. Do you have children, Miss Okonkwo? He asked. No. Then you cannot understand what it's like to know your child will be targeted because of who you are, what you do. Ji-hoon has been different since birth, sensitive, vulnerable. In my world, vulnerability is death. I have spent his entire life trying to protect him, trying to make him strong enough to survive when I'm gone. For the first time, Zara heard something beyond threat in his voice. She heard fear. And in doing so, she said quietly, you've made him feel like who he is isn't enough, like he has to become someone else to be worthy of your protection. Don Kong was silent for a long moment. What do you want from him? He finally asked. Nothing, Zara said honestly. I want him to discover what he wants for himself, that's all. That's a luxury people like us cannot afford. Then maybe that's the problem. Another long silence. Then Don Kong did something unexpected. He laughed. It was short, bitter, but genuine. You're either very brave or very foolish, he said. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? He studied her for a moment longer, then reached for a phone on his desk. You may continue teaching my son, but there will be conditions. Zara's heart lifted slightly. What conditions? You will allow my security to sweep your studio weekly. You will report if Ji-hoon seems distressed, or if anyone unusual approaches him. And if I discover you are using your access to harm him in any way, there will be consequences you cannot imagine. It wasn't freedom, but it was something. Agreed, Zara said. Don Kong nodded once. You may go. As Zara turned to leave, he spoke again. Miss Okonkwo, thank you for seeing him. She glanced back. The powerful Don Kong suddenly looked like nothing more than a worried father. He makes it easy, she replied. The weeks that followed were tense but transformative. Ji-hoon threw himself into dance with renewed passion, as if afraid the opportunity might be stolen away again. And Zara, now aware of the scrutiny, taught with both dedication and caution. Then everything changed on a Friday night in November. Zara was locking up the studio when she heard the screech of tires. Before she could react, a van pulled up and 3 men jumped out. These weren't Don Kong's men. She could tell immediately from their movements, their intent. Where's Kang's son? One of them demanded, grabbing her arm. I don't know what you're talking about, Zara said, trying to pull away. Don't play stupid. We know he comes here. Where is he? Zara's mind raced. Ji-hoon was inside, changing after their lesson. If these men got to him? He's not here, she lied. He canceled. The man's grip tightened painfully. You're lying. A sound from inside the studio gave her away. The men pushed past her, and Zara's instincts kicked in. She slammed the door lock behind them, trapping them in the front room while she ran for the back. Ji-hoon! She shouted. Back door now! He emerged from the changing room, confusion turning to terror as he heard the men breaking through. Run! Zara grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the rear exit. But before they could reach it, the front door splintered open. Zara made a split-second decision. She shoved Ji-hoon into the small storage closet. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Call your father. Now. But now! She closed the door just as the men rounded the corner. Where is he? The leader demanded. Gone, Zara said, positioning herself in front of the closet. Out the back before you broke in. The man studied her face, looking for deception. Then he nodded to his partners. Check the back. Find him. As 2 men ran toward the rear exit, the leader stayed with Zara. She could hear her heart pounding, could feel Ji-hoon's presence just feet away behind the thin door. You're loyal, the man said conversationally. That's admirable. Stupid, but admirable. You know what Don Kong would pay to get his son back if we took him? You won't get the chance, Zara replied, praying Ji-hoon had made the call. We'll see. The next 10 minutes felt like hours. The men searched the studio, destroying equipment and overturning furniture. Zara stood her ground in front of the closet, her mind calculating every possible move, every possible outcome. Then she heard them. Sirens getting closer. The leader's expression darkened. He grabbed Zara by the throat. You'll regret this. But before he could do anything, the studio's front windows exploded inward. Not police. Don Kong's men, moving with military precision. Within seconds, the attempted kidnappers were on the ground, subdued. And then Don Kong himself strode through the broken doorway. His eyes found Zara immediately, scanning her for injuries. Then they moved to the closet door. It's safe, Ji-hoon, Zara called, her voice shaking. The door opened slowly. Ji-hoon emerged, his face pale, his entire body trembling. When he saw his father, something broke. He rushed forward, and for the first time in what Zara suspected was years, father and son embraced. I'm sorry, Don Kong said quietly, his voice thick. I'm so sorry. Later, after the police came and left, after the statements were given and the studio secured, Zara found herself once again in Don Kong's study. But this time, Ji-hoon sat beside her. Those men work for the Nakamura family, Don Kong explained. Rivals who saw an opportunity when they learned about Ji-hoon's lessons. They thought he was an easy target. He wasn't, Zara said, glancing at Ji-hoon with pride. He kept calm. He called for help. He did everything right. Don Kong nodded slowly. Because you taught him to stay calm under pressure. The breathing techniques, the focus exercises. You gave him tools I never could. Father, Ji-hoon began, but Don Kong raised his hand. Let me finish. I have spent your entire life trying to make you into something you're not, trying to force you into a mold that doesn't fit. And in doing so, I failed to see your actual strengths, your pattern recognition, your attention to detail, your ability to stay focused when others panic. These are valuable. You are valuable. Exactly as you are. Ji-hoon's eyes filled with tears. I never thought I'd hear you say that. I should have said it years ago. Don Kong turned to Zara. And you? You put yourself in danger to protect my son. Why? Zara considered the question. Because he deserves to be protected. Not because he's your son or your heir, because he's Ji-hoon, and Ji-hoon matters. Don Kong stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. I cannot change what I am, or what I do. But perhaps I can change how I see my son's place in it. Ji-hoon, if you want to continue dancing, you can. If you want to explore other paths beyond the family business, we'll discuss it. I won't force you into a life that destroys you. Ji-hoon stood slowly. I don't want to abandon the family. I just want to be allowed to contribute in my own way. Then we'll find that way together. Father and son looked at each other with new understanding. It wasn't a complete transformation. Years of hurt and misunderstanding couldn't dissolve in one night, but it was a beginning. Don Kong turned to Zara one final time. The studio damages will be repaired, fully. And I want to discuss funding and expansion. A program for young people who need what you offer. No strings, no control, just support. Zara was stunned. Thank you. Thank you, he replied, for seeing what I was too blind to see. 6 months later, the new wing of Zara's studio opened. The Movement and Mind program served dozens of young people, offering dance therapy and expression classes designed for neurodivergent students. Ji-hoon volunteered as an assistant instructor, his gentle patience and understanding making him perfect for the role. On opening night, as Zara watched Ji-hoon guide a nervous teenager through a simple sequence, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Don Kong stood beside her, watching his son with undisguised pride. He's happy, Don Kong said simply. Yes, Zara agreed. I have you to thank for that. You have yourself to thank. You chose to listen. That's the hardest part. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as Ji-hoon helped the teenager complete the sequence. When the young person smiled, genuinely smiled, Ji-hoon's face lit up with joy. He's going to change lives, Zara said. He already has, Don Kang replied, looking at her meaningfully. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the studio quieted, Zara and Ji-hoon stood alone in the practice room, the same space where everything had begun, now expanded and transformed. Can I ask you something? Ji-hoon said. Always. That night at the gala, when you asked me to dance, why did you choose me? Zara smiled, remembering. Because you looked like someone who needed to be seen, and I know what that feels like. I'm glad you saw me, Ji-hoon said quietly. I spent so many years feeling invisible, feeling wrong, but you made me feel like I could be exactly as I am. You are always enough, Ji-hoon, always. He held out his hand just like she had that first night. One more dance? For old times' sake? Zara took his hand with a laugh. Just one? Maybe more than one, he admitted with a shy smile. As they moved together, the choreography now familiar and comfortable, Zara thought about how one moment of kindness could change everything, how one dance could open doors neither of them had imagined, how connection could bridge worlds that seemed impossibly distant. The music swelled around them, and in that space between movement and stillness, Ji-hoon and Zara found what they'd both been searching for, not escape from their worlds, but a way to exist within them authentically, not fixing what was broken, but celebrating what was whole. One dance had changed everything, but it was all the dances that came after that truly transformed their lives. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe for more incredible stories where African depth meets Korean rhythm, and drop a comment telling us what moment resonated with you most. Your support helps us bring more of these powerful narratives to life. Until next time, keep dancing through life with courage and authenticity.